Welcome to the Shyamcast. This is Brett.
This is Shyam.
Thanks so much for being here with us. How are you today, Shyam?
Very good. Busy. Always. Somehow, previously I used to feel I'm not so busy. I can handle something more. But now I'm feeling that, no, I think I am consumed. That is a good sign, actually.
Yeah. Good. You've reached your limit or your
Maybe a
point.
little bit more I can do.
Mm.
But not a whole lot, though.
Always a little bit more you can do,
A
right?
little bit more, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we're getting into chapter six today.
Oh, we are
We're
starting this chapter.
we're starting chapter six.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Dhyan Yoga.
No.
So yeah, this is like it's the final chapter of um what is often grouped into like the first part of Bhagavad Gita. People will often group the Gita into uh, three different parts, where chapters 1 through 6 is one, and then 7 through 12 is another, and 13 through 18 is the last one. So this is the last chapter in what you might call like the introduction to yoga and yoga practice, and okay, these different types of yoga, and then yeah, we'll be getting into more knowledge, you know, um, and I guess just a whole lot of good stuff later on. But yeah, we're in a chapter called Dhyan Yoga.
Hmm.
Dhyan is essentially meditation,
Hmm. Hmm.
correct? Uh,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
so this is a chapter that focuses on a few different things, but obviously meditative yoga being one of them.
Hmm.
Um, so what I have today, Prabhuji, we're going to read two verses.
Hmm. I
Uh,
know which verses you will read.
I think I'm sure you know which verses we're going to read. Honestly, I mean, you're probably not surprised by any of the verses that we read. I
I
would.
mean, I know which verses, like, there is a lot of discussion,
Yeah.
possibly.
Okay. Well, I hope I don't disappoint then. If I read two verses, you're like, oh, I didn't think that was gonna. Um, but anyway, yeah, the ones we're gonna read today are 6.5 and 6.6.
That's what I thought.
Oh, good.
Okay, all right.
So starting with 6.5,
Hmm.
Krishna says, one must deliver himself with the help of the mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Hmm. I'll read it one more time. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Hmm. So it's all about the mind and conquering the mind or controlling the mind. And that's what this chapter focuses a lot on. Yes, controlling the mind.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Because if the mind is not controlled, how can we meditate?
Hmm.
He is the one who wants something else.
Yeah, the mind is that thing that's always drawing the attention away this way and that,
Hmm.
getting us lost.
Like
Um,
the second one also, so we discuss the sixth. Oh, you read both?
yeah, that was both.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Mhm. So the first part of 6.5 Prabhuji is that one must deliver himself with the help of his mind. So Krishna is pointing to how if we're going to get where we're going, spiritually speaking, we have to use the mind. The mind is the helper, you know. Um, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind.
Hmm.
So it points to this total like this importance of the mind, this vital role that the mind plays in this whole thing.
Mm.
whole spiritual project, right? That Krishna is talking about. And he also says not degrade himself,
Mm.
which I think is interesting. I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about that, like what might be meant when Krishna says that. So we're using the mind to help us, but we don't want to degrade ourselves.
Mm. Well, few common examples that our teachers used to give is mind is a tool. It can be used either ways. Many common examples is a knife. It can take a life, it can save a life. In a hand of a doctor, it can save a life. In a hand of maybe a um, evil motive person can harm another person. Wealth can be used in a positive purposes, can be used in negative purposes, and everything. Mobile phones, laptops, technology, internet can be used in positive direction to help us grow and can be used to help us degrade. So just like everything is a tool, um, likewise mind is given to us as a tool. It is very hard to distinguish ourselves from the mind, because generally when the mind says something, we think we cannot distinguish that the mind is getting disturbed, cannot separate the mind up from ourselves. It's hard basically. If we can separate, we won't be disturbed, and then the discrimination is there between what to do, what not to do. But if we cannot separate, then we'll just desire what the mind is desiring. Mind can be controlled, mind can be uncontrolled. If we associate ourselves with the mind and the mind is desiring something which is temporary, and if we allow the mind and if we do what the mind is desiring, and then we end up degrading ourselves. And intelligence is not so sharp many times to distinguish. And sometimes the flow can be so fast that we can't even think, and the mind says, and we did it. And then sometimes we do something, and later on, when the modes change, and these modes are very powerful. So when mode of passion, ignorance are influencing us, then we do some action, and we that action is justified that time. But when we come to goodness, and then we feel like, what did I do? Suddenly we lament, what did I do? The mind and the three modes, they act through the mind.
Yeah. So yeah, to that point, Prabhuji, like when we are more sattvic or in a more sattvic state, uh, mode of goodness, that's knowledge, right? And clear sight. So we're seeing clearly.
Mm.
And when we're in a more tamasic or ignorant state, that's when one of the times, we tend to identify with the mind. And, it's like it's ignorance because we don't recognize that it's happening. There isn't an ability there to differentiate ourself from the mind, from the thinking and all the different paths that the mind will take us down. We sort of think that this just is me, or we would, I guess, if we were conscious of it. That's why it's kind of hard to wrap the mind around, I guess, right? Because if we're in an ignorant state, then we're ignorant of it, and it's only after there's some little bit of like a realization there, looking back, oh wow, I was like that, then we're sort of in more of a state of knowledge at that time. And then we
Mm.
kind of see that, oh yes, this is something like that I did do in the past, we have a different vision of it, but
Mm.
it
Mm.
can be very hard to see it in the moment. Yeah, like you say, it kind of takes you away. Um,
Mm.
even the thought of like I am disturbed is that itself is still a thought. It's still sort of like, well, the mind is disturbed.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
the mind is disturbed, but um, yeah, a lot of very hard to differentiate. right? It's like, who am I? And what is disturbed? So yeah, anyway.
One thing that is favorable for devotion is equanimity in gain and loss.
Mm,
Many times the mind becomes disturbed.
mm. So yeah, not, so that's sort of like not, well, I guess what I'm thinking, Prabhuji, from that is sometimes we become disturbed, and then that sort of leads us to become more disturbed.
Mm,
We're disturbed that we are disturbed.
mm,
Or, I'm angry because I'm sad or something, like one, the mind is sort of acting on us in one way. And so then that we sort of become, we acknowledge that, but that actually just leads to a greater disturbance
mm,
of mind.
mm,
And so if you can maybe, like, say you feel a disturbance in the mind, but just recognize that you're feeling a disturbance in the mind and not have a reaction to that, that sort
mm,
of helps
mm,
get yourself on a
mm,
little bit more equanimous.
mm. Mind can produce so many desires, no?
Mm,
So many attachments. And mind says, I want it. No, 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 I want it. No, 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 I really want it. So mind can keep going. So it's like mind is trying to degrade us. Again, if we, based on how much goodness is there, that much we can recognize the mind wants it. But then there comes the question how strong the intelligence is. Not so strong, then we will be pulled by the mind. Strong, then we will hold back. But if we realized, then the mind itself won't bring that thought. The mind will then, the intelligence is very strong. The intelligence will say, "See, this is the power of the modes, this illusory energy." Mostly we cannot see that.
I heard once, Prabhuji, that every thought craves to be believed.
Mm,
And yeah, I think that's sort of, it does, and what you're talking about is it points towards that the mind as a potential enemy. This verse says that the mind's your friend and your enemy.
mm,
And it's sort of like it's based off of our choices. It's based off of um, our knowledge and our decision making. Whether we are leading the mind towards being our friend or being more of an enemy. And so it is very easy, and maybe it's a more natural kind of state for a conditioned person in the world for the mind to be more of an enemy, where it wants you to believe everything that pops up inside of it, and sort of wants you to identify with it. Um, and I guess that is sort of at least partially a description of this is how the mind can be an enemy.
mm.
This is how it acts as an enemy for a living entity. Um, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the opposite, how, in what sort of a way that the mind can be our friend, how we can think about that.
I was also thinking on the previous point, it is also mentioned the mind is very strong.
Mm,
And if he wants something, don't give him, comes cranky. No, 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 I want it. Like he's very forceful, very powerful, very strong.
mm,
Um, just like a child uh, wants a toy. I have seen in the stores. The father says no. The child will roll on the ground. He'll shout and scream in the store. And the wanted wonder, don't go. Ah. That's how the mind is actually. Because
mm,
attached to something, want it. Doesn't want to hear no.
mm. Yeah, Ruji. Think of like if some day where you've traveled a lot and you've had a long day, worked hard, during the course of the day, maybe you're a little hungry, haven't had dinner yet, and coming home and then, somebody calls I'm like, hey, I need your attention. We need to talk about, this. It's like, very easy to get into maybe an irritable mood or something, and, that mind is, yeah, very, very strong and tricky, really makes you believe certain things.
Yeah. Manipulates us in a way that no, this is okay. Very sharp in convincing us that's fine, this is needed. Mind, like
Mm,
he basically controls us.
mm,
Scary.
mm,
One example given is um, us a yogi should control the mind like a hunter tames the lion. When he catches a lion for some zoo or some zoo, they have some trained lions and they can do whatever the hunter wants. So initially they tame the lion is very wild animal actually. The lion can in 1 minute eat the hunter also. It's very powerful. If he is hungry, the hunter is nowhere near. But then although he may tame the lion, he starved the lion. He he's very careful when he's around lion because he knows that lion can take one's life. So it is said like likewise yogi should be that much careful with the mind, knowing that the mind can make me degrade right now and bring havoc in my life. That much careful one is dealing with the mind. But it's like, these yogis have a lot of realizations of how the mind tricks them in the past. And they have a lot of kind of realizations so they can see the actions of the mind, so they're very careful. But for some of us, maybe the mind says, and we're like, okay, okay, like very surrendered followers of the mind.
mm. Yeah, there's I suppose another way that the mind works to sort of trick us is that it has us think that we came up with the idea, or it convinces us to do something. Hey, this is okay. Um, you can you can do that, and then it we end up saying, well, I thought, or I decided that this was fine. Um, it has that sort of way of like sort of it builds the ego up in that way, right? We become convinced that um this wasn't just like a thought that occurred, like I wasn't controlled, I did the controlling, is what we end up thinking, right? Like I'm in control of these thoughts, I'm in control of my actions and my desires and urges, and so if I did this thing, well, I chose to do this thing, and that's sort of like, you know, I'm in control of that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's a very difficult sh it's a very difficult shift, right? Or it's a very difficult to try to see the other way. Um, like, wow, I was controlled in that instance, you know. Um, and so yeah, I guess it does leave me wondering then sort of um where is our control in the matter, I guess? Where is our choice? Does that make sense for you?
There is one thing that Yugul Kishore Prabhuji told me. He said in 3 words, he said, mind is a rascal.
Hmm.
And then listen what he said. He said, mind will tell you, do this. You do it. Then after some time, when the reaction comes, mind will say, fool, why did you do that? First, mind will force us to do something. Then mind will say, now suffer. Why did you do that? Mind doesn't take the blame, doesn't take the reaction. Mind forces us, and then when we suffer, then mind chastises us. Amazing action.
Hmm. There's a just really quick for you. There's I guess a little phrase that sometimes used like my future self, people will say. So it's like, oh, my future self is not gonna like this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. You might say like, okay, my future self is not gonna like that I'm gonna stay up really late and watch this show or whatever, you know. I know I have to get up in the morning, but I'm gonna do it. And never, you know, of course, when you wake up in the morning, your mind is like berating you about why did we do that? Why did you do that? So it's just one example that makes me think of.
Yeah, another very common thing is during the exam time, the kids go to movies in the night, and then they think they will study in the night, whole night. After coming from movie, they will be fresh. They'll study whole night. The mind says, yeah, yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go. In the morning, the mind says, you fool, why did you go? When you know so much has to be studied, when you will get tired, why did you do that? Now, how will you prepare? You're like, hey, why? You only forced me to go, you're only chastising. Or my mind is like that.
So is it, well, it almost makes me feel then, Prabhuji, like, you know, when it first does the convincing, okay, you should do this, you know, you should go to the movie. It's sort of acting as an enemy. It's, you know, the mind in that instance is acting, you know, it's sort of against our good, you know, convincing us to do this thing that is not going to be beneficial, that will cause suffering later. And then later on, you know, after the fact, the mind is sort of saying, why did you do that? It almost seems like that's when the mind is acting like a friend,
Relative friend.
relative.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Relatively, he's acting like a compared to last time. But if you see the modes are in play now.
Hmm.
First, the mind was influenced by passion, ignorance. Then the mind is influenced by goodness. Mind in goodness, goodness leads to knowledge. Discrimination. Passion leads to selfishness. Ignorance is darkness, illusion. So the mind is controlled. It is said that three modes act through the mind. Mind is the agent through which the modes act on us.
Hmm. Hmm. So if we want to know which modes are acting on us, we can pay attention to our thoughts, you know, what kind of thoughts are in there.
Yeah. When we are when we are able to pay attention to our thoughts, that itself is goodness.
Hmm.
Mode of passion, we can't even think that we are thinking something, we just act.
Hmm.
But if modes are mixed. So some maybe some goodness may still be there because never like fully passion, fully ignorance. No? Some little goodness may be there that says this is not good. But then if influence of passion, ignorance is way more than goodness, then we will end up in allowing those modes to take over us.
Hmm.
And more the goodness, knowledge will prevail.
So is the process of improving modes, our modes of nature, you know, trying to get more into goodness, does that process sort of entail a lot of saying no to the mind when the mind, you know, pops up? Is that sort of the, you know, where the work that we have to do lies?
Initially, eventually, when the mode of passion, ignorance loses its grip on us, the mind will not no more desire. The mind will become peaceful. When the mind is encouraging us to do spiritual things, the mind itself will say, hey, let's do podcast now, or like let's chant now, let's read now. So that time the mind is actually our friend. Other times, hey, beware. So it's doing both no? Many times. And why I said relative truth, goodness is better than passion and ignorance, but still binds the living entity.
Hmm. So yeah, if we're looking for something transcendental, right? Then we, you know, we want our mind to lead us to something spiritual, as you're saying. And I suppose it's that puts into context for me a little bit, you know, sort of the central focus of meditation,
Mm.
where, you know, there's a verse in this chapter where Krishna, mentions focusing on one point. And, when we do japa meditation, we're focusing on the mantra. And so even though the mind is sort of may sometimes be wandering and, going here and there, the practice of meditation often entails coming back to that one central focal point, which is, in this case, is the Maha Mantra. So it's like, sort of like this austerity of mind, this sort of struggle with the mind, I guess, or if maybe it sometimes feels like a struggle with the mind, but, where it's sort of getting lost and then you bring it back. It gets lost and you bring it back. And so sort of, it just points to me, I guess it's makes that fact stand out to me a little bit more than like just the central importance of that. It's like, this practice is you're trying to help control the mind and really turn the mind from an enemy into a friend. The mind just keeps trying to get you off track, keeps trying to take you here and there, satisfy some sort of temporary whim, and you just sort of continually bring it back, to a transcendental, mantra. And that sort of process in itself helps to bring us more into a state of goodness, and create a friend out of the mind.
One thing Prabhupada says that good news is the mind can be trained. Just like a child can be trained, mind can be trained. Prabhupada said if the mind is not trained, then the end of the life, whatever the mind thinks, that decides the next birth. How powerful. Our next life is also dependent upon the mind. We are so much dependent on the mind.
I guess, Prabhuji, I'd like to just go back a little bit to the very beginning of this verse 6.5, and sort of to the subject of what sort of like what is our role here, like what is our work here. Krishna is saying you have to, one delivers themselves with the help of the mind, sort of helping to move that mind from enemy down to friend. The first part of this verse is one must deliver himself. So, it's like Krishna is really putting the onus on the seeker or on the yogi to, one must deliver himself with the help of the mind. And so I'm wondering just on that, that point of like, okay, what's the work? What's the role that the living entity has? Because we are talking as well about the mind is always sort of taking control, convincing us that we're in control when we're clearly not. So yeah, how do we think of that? How can we, sort of like help to, we're trying to deliver ourselves, with the help of the mind.
So a few things can come. One is a schedule. It is said empty mind is devil's workshop. I think it's a very common saying. So we are keeping ourselves positively engaged. We don't let mind we don't give mind the chance to take over us by being very busy. We have the free will. Then the intelligence comes into the play. Krishna says his mind is very powerful, but the mind is inferior to intelligence. So if intelligence can be sharpened, then intelligence can control the mind. All the mind is very powerful, still can be controlled by intelligence. It's just that's how the system is designed. So we work on sharpening our intelligence. And it is said intelligence sharpened through books, association, knowledge. We get a discrimination between right and wrong. And the mind presents, then intelligence also says this is wrong. In the beginning, the discrimination itself is not there. And before doing something which is not very favorable, we don't even see the fault in that. We think it's fine. What's wrong in doing this? What's wrong in a cow? If I like the cow, I like a cow. Eating a cow. What's wrong in that? So intelligence helps to discriminate between right and wrong. Then when the desire may come by the mind, hey, I want this. The intelligence says, no, 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 no. I know that this is not good, no, not this thing. Then some free will became stronger. Before we came to our spiritual life, Prabhu, I mean, we did have discrimination between right and wrong. We are doing wrong things and we think it's okay. It's fine. But now we know, now we won't do because we got understanding. Previously we'll do because we don't see anything wrong in that. And most of the people here, what they do, they don't think there is anything wrong in that. Whether what we eat or what we drink or what we do, they don't see anything wrong in that. So that's where the intelligence comes into play.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. A lot of times we have to be, we have to kind of get burnt, a few times. We have to like reach our hand into the fire as many times as it takes before we realize, I keep getting burnt every time I do that. I don't think I should do that anymore, you know. And I guess I've noticed with myself that like it kind of depends on how strong an attachment is.
Mm.
Um, if something is sort of very strong in the mind, like desires it a lot, there's gonna have to be more. It's like you have to learn that lesson a little harder.
Mm.
It's harder to give a, a particular thing up that you're very attached to, and so it's almost like there's sort of a larger amount of suffering that I have to go through with regard to that attachment because it's it's just a stronger pull. So it's like I have to get burnt more times or a little bit more intensely before that intelligent factor actually says you shouldn't do this, or if it has happened at all.
That's one way is we learn through experience.
Mm.
Um, um, but there is also a like we okay, suppose mind is attached to something, and
Mhm.
another way is through how do I say um, we want to replace our attachment with something else.
Mm.
One thing is we feed into the attachment and see the reaction from it, and one thing is we replace the attachment with something else. Like there is a saying, habits die hard, you know, but those habits can be changed by replacing them with certain other good habits. Bad habits can be changed. In the beginning, the craving may be there for those attachments. When we take up something else, the it doesn't go away easily. But then there is a saying, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, it's not like this. We have to see only. It can be just remember. And basically, we have to get it out of contemplation. And when we don't contemplate, then gradually the relationship will become weaker with whatever that is. That may be simply a smoke. That may be anything. The relationship will become weaker if we give ourselves a gap to it and engage in something more positive. We may withdraw. Like we hear about contemplation more and more. I need it, I need it, I need it, I need it. And now I need it even more because I'm thinking so many times that I need it. I'm thinking so much about it.
Mm.
That's why it's the training. No, no, no. And then positively engaging. It's a purpose, it's a tug of war. The mind is trying to drag us in some direction. And that's why a yogi, we discussed this sometime in the past, a yogi is compared to a warrior, spiritual warrior. There's a tug of war. Now, do I give in to it or do I fight back? Because see, transcendental knowledge, it will come when it comes. We are not there yet. But the war is right now going on in the mind. And we need to keep ourselves busy, engaged, cautious, careful. So that's when we are not degrading ourselves with the help of the mind. We are trying not to degrade ourselves. Very easy to do wrong things, right? Easiest thing. Very hard to do the right thing. You know? And that's what a yogi is. If we do what the mind says, there's nothing great about it. But if we don't do what the mind says, then there is something great about it. Everybody gives in. We also give. What's the difference?
Oh yeah, and I guess yeah, it's happening all the time.
And bro, the demands are going to constant.
Doesn't stop.
Uh, and that's, for example, what we are doing right now. We are using the mind to elevate ourselves. We are getting relief. Again, the mind, whenever free, okay. So it's like how much, because the mind is trained for so many lifetimes. But then prayers, because we feel helpless. Krishna,
Mm,
please, I don't want to give into this. Please give me strength. One devotee asked Prabhupada, how can I control the mind? Prabhupada said, mind is Krishna's energy. We are like infinitesimal small and Krishna is infinite. So how can we infinitesimal small fight with Krishna's infinite energy? The three modes. Krishna says, very difficult to overcome. Duratya, very difficult to overcome. Then Krishna says, but who surrenders unto me can easily go beyond it. Cannot fight. If we fight to win, we lose after few attempts of winning.
mm, mm. Yeah. So we have a choice in the matter, right? We have free will, we have the ability to choose. We always have the ability to choose. So we can always choose, ignore the mind, follow the mind, surrender, not surrender. But then on the other hand, you're also talking about grace, right? Or like receiving mercy. And that's so that's there's this I guess maybe what I'm just noticing, Prodigy, is like there's a component that's in our control and there's a component that's out of our control. Um, and I suppose maybe if we just focus on this thing that's in our control right now, how do I spend this time? Follow this thought, don't follow this thought. Just focusing on that leads us to a place where we receive the grace that that like we really don't by ourselves have the ability to overcome, to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. When we engage in activities which are conducive for receiving grace, the grace will come automatically.
Mm,
But at the same time, if we feel helpless and if we can discriminate, then we can pray more because we can discriminate. Another thing that helps is seeing the future, what this action will lead to. Based on what it led to, what a similar action in the past had led to, what this action today will lead to. And then becoming caution or fearful about it. So mind says, I want this, we tell the mind. That's what you get with it. Mind says, oh no, I don't want that. I just want this. Like they say, we kind of teach a child now. You want this? You know what will happen? You will get insects on your teeth. Oh, yeah. No, I don't want to eat too much because I'll go through a lot of pain from that. So likewise, when the child is cranky, you speak to the intelligence and it says, ah, no. So likewise, when the mind is cranky, you speak to the mind. What are you gonna get? Also, it is mentioned that the mind is looking for pleasures now. The pleasure is not in the activity; it is in the mind only. When the actual activity comes, the mind says, "Why was I so eager about it?" Actually, pleasure is joy is not in the activity. Mind just contemplates and, like it is said, eating imaginary bananas. Not eating any bananas, imaginary banana there. So like his mind just convinces us I'll be happy. Doesn't lead to happiness.
Mm. Yeah, I can remember reading something recently, Prabhuji, that talked about sort of how science is corroborating that very idea that, like the dopamine hit that we receive, um, which is like the pleasure chemical in the brain. It comes before the activity. It's like it has to do with the anticipation of an activity rather than the activity
Mm,
itself. It's just so just as you say, it's thinking about the activity that really is where that
mm.
pleasure lies.
Also, it's easy to talk about the mind, but it's very hard when it comes to practically putting that in action. Very hard because it's very strong and powerful,
Mm.
uncontrolled.
I'm thinking of one example because I'm trying to imagine this other side where the mind is the best of friends. And I don't know that state, but just trying to picture of it and create some sort of a comparison to help me imagine it. I'm thinking of like a group of people who are working on a project together. And if everybody's mind is sort of acting in this as this enemy, dragging them around, there's going to be, some confrontation. Oh, I think this. No, I think this. What we should do what I want. No, we should do what I want. Oh, you don't, that person doesn't matter, that, whatever. Like the mind is sort of, it's in that selfish mode, it's in like a confrontational mode. The mind's desires are sort of the thing that's winning out. Whereas on the other side, if everyone is in sort of connecting with each other, listening to each other. Hey, I like that idea. What if that? Your idea made me think of this. Whatever is sort of whatever input is coming in from others, the mind is just trying to work with that, create the best result for whatever this group is doing. That feels like that's more of, people's minds are acting as their friends. They're working together, collaborating. One idea bounces off of another, leads to another one. And, there's a sort of a greater goal in mind, whatever this project is that they're working on. So when everyone is working on one goal, the whole team has a single goal. The
Mm,
minds, their minds are sort of naturally working as their
mm,
friends. They're all working towards the same end. They're all going towards the same place. But if everybody has their own personal goal, which is just sort of my interest, pride, my
mm,
then it's disparate. People are not in agreeing. It doesn't go well, and the
mm,
project turns out to be not as good.
mm, mm.
Anything, Prabhuji, because we are,
Yeah,
about at our time. Is there anything else that you would say on this?
on
The
friend
mind.
side,
What's that? Just
on
either
a friend.
one. Yeah, enemy, friend.
Again, it's needs to be trained. The mind has a natural tendency to repeat pleasurable experiences. So when the mind finds pleasure in spiritual lives, then mind wants to repeat that also, and then mind encourages that. Then mind is actually becoming our friend. So we want to give mind many positive spiritual experiences is very good, and negative material experiences is very good. So that's like we are kind of positively training the mind. Again, Prabhupada said can be trained. Na? So if you like to chant, then early morning the mind will say, get up, you have to do now. What you have to do. And that's why routine also helps. Na? Because when we are in routine, then mind gets trained to a particular routine. Then and then taking responsibility of things also. Because mind may just keep sleeping. Who cares about job? Who cares about this? But when we take responsibility, then um, that's where schedule positive spiritual experiences, all these things helps to that we don't go into the mind zone.
Yeah, stay out of the mind zone. Yeah, thank you, Prodigy. I mean, I think we like our life a lot better when we're able to do that, right? In those moments that we can do that, right?
And even those who are not spiritualists, even they cannot be successful if mind is uncontrolled. Even a successful whether businessman or a service class or a doctor, they need a lot of control of their mind. Even these um, 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 Bollywood, Hollywood, they also need a lot of control on their mind, what to eat, what not to eat. The mind is just like if we let the mind do, the mind is gonna spoil us in no time actually. Everybody needs to exhibit some control. But again, most of the things are relative good. Ultimate good is when the mind actually takes us out of this existence only, this bondage only, gives us to what the soul actually belongs to. Then that's like ultimate good, absolute good. That's where we want the mind to become our best friend.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Roji.
Thank you, Brett Prabhu. Very pleased to again get connected. I think 2 weeks break. we- Something came up. A God Purnima one time came up. Had some celebrations, wonderful celebrations. Okay, thank you all for joining and see you next week, hopefully. Bye for now.